Hello all out there, yes it is that time of year again where I give you guys my top 10 worst movies of the year list as well as my top 10 best. I know a lot of other people on YouTube do it the other way around, but again I'm going to be unique this year. And if you're wondering where I am, I know this location is slightly different, but that's because I'm currently on my Christmas vacation from my job, but that wasn't going to stop me from bringing you guys these videos. So here we go, starting with of course my most disappointing movie of the year, or my dishonorable mention, whichever which way you want to look at it. For me this year, it is the Lego Ninjago movie. Now, while the animation was absolutely spectacular and on par with the other Lego movies, unfortunately the plot just was all over the place and felt very cliched and very predictable and kind of felt like a Lego version of Power Rangers, as that is one of the only properties Lego does not seem to have the rights to, so they seem to have made their own version. But anyway, I am rambling on. Let's get on with the top 10 worst movies of 2017, in my opinion. Starting at number 10, which is The Boss Baby. Now, while a movie that I did not get to review on this channel, I did see it nonetheless, and unfortunately, the whole thing felt like a complete mess from start to finish, starting with the performances which felt very phoned in, and the animation was pretty bad on the whole, as a lot of it felt very unrendered, which my lovely girlfriend pointed out to me as we were watching the movie together. So unfortunately, that is why that is my number 10. Now moving on to number 9, which is Baywatch. Now, while a guilty pleasure movie for me personally, I still think that it was very all over the place plot-wise, and while a lot of it was played for laughs, a lot of the jokes just felt like they were held on to for too long, and that's what dragged the movie down a lot for me personally, but it is still very much a guilty pleasure for me looking back on it. And it's probably one I will pick up on Blu-ray at some point. Anyway, moving on to my number 8, which is probably my most controversial movie on this list. Now, while it got high critical praise and high audience praise for the most part, you guys have to remember, all film is subjective. What one person likes might not be necessarily what someone else likes. I know that has been the case with Star Wars The Force Awakens. Anyway, I'm getting off track. So, my number 8 is Thor Ragnarok. Now, before you come at me with your hate in the comments down below, let me explain why. Now, unfortunately, this movie felt like it played too much of its comedy up, which made the dramatic moments feel very underwhelming and just like you didn't feel anything. Like the big moment between Odin, Thor, and Loki, I personally didn't feel anything for it because of all the humorous moments that had just preceded it before. And a lot of the action sequences felt very underwhelming as well, in my opinion. Anyway, moving on to number 7, which is, for me, a Netflix original movie called Death Note. Now, while the character of Light was played extremely well, in my opinion, the movie, which it is based off a Japanese anime, which is such a genius piece of anime. If you guys have not seen Death Note, definitely check it out for yourselves. But the movie turned into very much a Twilight teenage angst romance drama, and that really dragged it down a lot for me. And in fact, in subsequent viewings since my first review, the rating has moved down to a 4 out of 10 for me, unfortunately. Now, moving on to number 6, which at the time was my most hated movie of the year, but has moved slightly up my countdown, and that is Kong Skull Island. Now, the one thing that drags a movie and takes me out of a movie personally is when you can imagine the actors sitting around a table reading the script during a table read. And that's what this movie did for me. Now, while John Goodman was absolutely fantastic in this movie, a lot of it felt very hammy, very over the top, and it just did not do it for me personally. And the CG was pretty good on Kong as well, but the movie surrounding him just did not work at all. So that's why that movie is at number 6 for me. Now, coming in at number 5 for my top 10 worst is a very, shouldn't be too much of a surprising choice, but number 5 for me is The Mummy, the Tom Cruise version. Oh my gosh, could you get as predictable and cliched as this movie was? And I hate to say this, but this is definitely one of Tom Cruise's worst performances, as it felt very much like he was just phoning this in from start to finish, as was Russell Crowe as Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So yes, that's why that movie is number 5 for me. Now, at number 4 is a movie that is probably going to be another surprise to people, but is another animated movie from Illumination, and I think it's fair to say it is time to kill this franchise. The Minions have really outstayed their welcome now. My number 4 is Despicable Me 3. A movie that just felt all over the place plot-wise. It didn't know what it wanted to do, and it didn't know what it wanted to be, unfortunately. So that is why that movie is at number 4 for me. Now, we're getting to the top 3. So at number 3, for me, is Flatliners. A movie that, oh my gosh, tried to explain what happens after death and was billed as a sequel to the original movie because it had Kiefer Sutherland in it, even though it actually was more or less a remake of the original. And let's just say this movie was pretty much dead on arrival. Now, coming in at number 2 is the most boring movie I ever saw this year, which was all style, no substance, and it's a movie I reviewed actually the last time I was out here, called Atomic Blonde. Now, while Charlize Theron was very good in it, as was John Goodman, unfortunately this is 2 movies on the list this year that John Goodman's been in that is actually on my worst of the year list. It felt like it was all action, no plot, and just a lot of pretty imagery with some action sequences to go with it. So that is my number 2. Now, before we get to my number 1 worst movie of the year list, which shouldn't be a surprise to people, let's go through the top 10 to 2. At number 10, The Boss Baby. At number 9, Baywatch. At number 8, Thor Ragnarok. At number 7, Death Note. At number 6, Kong Skull Island. At number 5, The Mummy. At number 4, Despicable Me 3. At number 3, gonna edit that. At number 3, Flatliners, and at number 2, Atomic Blonde. And the number 1 worst movie of 2017 is The Emoji Movie. Oh my gosh, I still question why my girlfriend dragged me to this. It was absolutely horrible from start to finish and felt more like a product placement. Now, while this was a kids movie, and I acknowledge that, and kids maybe got some enjoyment out of it, as a movie itself, you can tell that Sony Pictures are in a lot of trouble, especially when it comes to a lot of their properties right now. So that is going to do it for another year for my top 10 worst movies of the year list. Coming up probably tomorrow will be my top 10 best movies of 2017, and that is always my favourite video to do for you guys, so look out for that. And thanks for watching this, guys, as always. Thank you for watching all year round, and feel free to comment down below with your top 10 worst movies of the year list. I would really be interested to see what they are. And don't forget to click that subscribe button and the bell so that you're always notified of whenever a future video is posted. And as always, guys, I shall see you all on the next one, and take care.